Hey guys, Miata Man here. Today we're going to show you how to do a thermostat on a 1.6 liter Miata. This one here is a 90. That's the thermostat housing right there in front of us. This is an original factory rad hose. You can tell because it's a perfect size. It doesn't have to be trimmed. It also has this patterning on it. And what we're going to do is replace that also at the same time. So let's begin. First of all, one of the most important things you're going to want right away before you get started is your eye protection. There's two reasons for that. If anything splashes out and gets in your eye, it's a bad day. Also, when you're taking these hose clamps off, if they get loose, they're going to go straight for your face. I've had it happen to me before, right between the eyes, a little bit in either direction. I would have lost an eye if I wasn't wearing my eye protection. So very important, wear the eye protection. Okay, so we got ourselves a new thermostat. We've got some ratchet clamps here, or hose clamps, and we may or may not use those, and the reason for that is we are going to use a factory hose, and with that, we should be able to still use these. And that's what I'm going to try and do to keep this original. If it was an aftermarket hose like a Gates or something like that, then I would definitely use the new hose clamps with it. Okay, so we're going to need ourselves a 12 millimeter socket to get these two bolts off. These two look very clean. A lot of these, they're quite rusty, and you do run the risk of breaking them off. So you have to be very careful how you do that. Otherwise, you're going to be drilling and tapping the thermostat neck down here where they thread in. Over time, this little gasket here does leak, and it usually leaks into that little space where the bolt goes through, and that can actually rust that in place and make it very difficult to get out. So be aware of that when you get started. If you are suspecting that it is quite rusty in there, you may want to back it off a tiny bit, spray it down with some penetrating oil. WD-40 is probably not your best bet. You're going to want something like PB Blaster, Deep Creep, something like that to get in there and break that up. And then you want to go back and forth, not just try and back it out one way. Sort of, undo it a little bit, tighten it back down, undo it a bit, tighten it down. That helps to break the rust off the threads. That saved me from breaking a lot of bolts over the years. So back it off a little bit, screw it down, back it off, screw it down. That helps to just break it off the threads. That way you don't torque out the bolt, stress it, and break it. Okay. We got some channel locks here. We may use these to get onto the onto this. You can also just use simple pliers to get on there, like these guys. Yeah, I mean, those should be just fine for what we're doing today. Yep, they'll work really well. And because we want to make sure we've got full control over those clamps, because if it does slip out, like I say, it will take off. It's got a lot of tension on it, and we want to make sure that we don't have an issue. Okay, so I'm going to put you in the tripod and we're going to get going on this thing. Okay guys, there we are. Get you centered up. Bingo. So I have put a pan underneath the car to catch any drips. There's another one underneath there. This is in case we make a mess, but we do have a drip pan underneath to catch whatever's going to leak out of here when we take this hose off. Okay, now don't do this when the car's hot. Do it when the car is cooled down and this, the water maybe is cold or warm. And you want to be very careful when you open up the rad cap. Open it very carefully and slowly, because there could be pressure in there. So you may want to put a towel over it so you don't get sprayed in the face, because it won't feel good if you do. Okay, so there we are. Also, while you're at it, inspect the seal on your rad cap. This one's got quite a bit of stuff on it actually. So this is a good time to figure out if you need a new rad cap. This one I would look at replacing this one pretty soon. There's a chunk of it that's actually broken off here too. So that may be a good idea to replace that one soon. Throw that in there for now. Other thing you want to have nearby is some paper towel or some rags. Okay, clamps off. There we are. So I've got a little thing here. I'm going to try and catch whatever coolant might be in the top. The less mess I can make, the easier it is at the end to clean up, and that way we're not getting antifreeze or coolant all over the driveway and then running the risk of having a pet come along and drink it up. So there we are. I think I caught most of that. So that's good, and then I can just do that. Yeah, it's a good time to have a look at the coolant as well. It's a funny color. I think my friend whose car this is said there was a mix of different kinds of coolant. So I think that might be the reason for the color on this. So it would be a very good idea to drain the whole system. We're doing this on the fly here because he's got an overheating issue. So we're going to start simple, do the thermostat first, but I'm going to recommend that he drains the entire system out afterwards, and then make sure that he's got good, clean, fresh coolant in there. Okay. Okay, now we've got that off. What we want to do is we want to get these clamps off of the old hose first. And this is where the eye protection comes in, okay? So make sure you've got these on. I've already got a pair on, but this is a second set just to remind you guys to put them on. Okay, so with your eye protection on, what you want to do is get these clamps off. Now this is where it's really important that you've got control over this clamp. So what I always do, I get it like that. I put my finger in the end of the hose like this. That way, if this thing does get loose, it's not going to fly anywhere. There we go. Be careful not to pinch your fingers in there. You're not likely to, but that way, even if that thing does spring out of the pliers, it's not going to fly. It's going to be contained, okay? Okay, so there's our clamps. So next we want to undo the connection that goes to the fan switch here. So this is what they call the thermo fan switch. And all that does is when it gets hot enough, it turns the cooling fan on. So when that sensor reads a certain temperature inside the thermostat housing, it will send a signal to turn the fan on and cool the motor. So that might be a good idea if you're doing this job to replace that at the same time. This one was done not that long ago from what I'm told, and it appears to still be working, so we're going to leave that one alone for right now. But I highly recommend you do that at the same time. Well, that's good news. Nice and smooth, not rusted solid. That's great. Yeah, those don't look too bad. These are some of the better ones I've seen lately. Quite often they're rusted like crazy all the way through here. But those look good. Makes our life a lot easier today. That one's stiff though. Yeah, that one's very stiff. So we may have a lot of rust on that one. So I'm just gonna go back and forth a little bit here. See if we can break some of that up. There we go, that did it. Either that or it's about to break off. We'll find out in a sec. But this is what I'm talking about with the back and forth. That way it cleans the threads, it breaks up the rust, saves you from breaking that bolt off if you go straight, straight at it. Yeah, I think we're home free on this one. But that simple bit of patience there can save you a lot of time and a lot of trouble. That's how it look in there. Oh yeah, that's what I'm talking about. You see how rusty that is? That's when they break off. So by being patient with that and not going for the gold right away, we went slow, steady, cracked it a bit, went back like that, and that allowed us to get that out without breaking it off. And if you've got a wire brush, it'd be a great idea to wire brush the threads as well. The other thing we should also do when we put these things back in is put some Never Sees on the threads, and that's what we'll do. This one's actually cleaning up okay, so we're good. But we want to clean those up, put Never Sees on when we reassemble. You can just see all the rust on the bracket here too that's come out of there. Yeah, so we've got that's the inside. That's the end of the sensor right there, and that's pretty crusty actually. So definitely get one of those before you start this job if you've got the time to make sure you've got all the parts lined up. Definitely get one of these sensors ordered up. You can see all the rust inside that hole there. Yeah, that's pretty crusty. Fire that in there for now. Now, the thermostat itself doesn't look great either. It's all corroded on the top there, that little nipple. So we're definitely on the right track here as far as what we're doing. Now when you're scraping the old gasket off, make sure you don't carve into the aluminum because you won't get a good seal. So you want to make sure you've got a good edge that's not going to dig in. So you want to go at it nice and flat. Just kind of push that gasket off. The other thing we can use as well is we can use a scraper with a razor blade in it just to get underneath it. Being careful not to dig the corner of the razor blade into the surface. There it is. There's your old one. Also, if you are using a razor blade scraper, make sure you don't chop your fingers off. Stay behind it if you can. Sometimes you forget when you're in a tight space like this working. But I know I caught myself just a minute ago. I have my fingers over here, and if I slip, man, that's not gonna be good. It's very important to have these surfaces clean and smooth so you get a proper seal when you put it all back together. You can also use a Scotch-Brite for this, or some fine sandpaper with a very fine grit, just to make sure you get everything off of it. Try and get that from the side, I think. we go. We're almost there. Don't rush this part, because this is one of the most important bits as far as making sure that it doesn't leak after you're all done. You see, I've seen lots of these things that are, you know, they just get it done and then they're leaking because somebody didn't take the time to do it right. So still got a little ways to go and then we're good. There we go. Do you know where the never sees is in the garage? So if you go in, far wall, it's on the first shelf, close to the stereo. There we are. Okay guys, almost there. Okay, so that is now smooth. A little bit of discoloration, but for right now we're good. Now, we'll clean this side up a bit too. Thank you. Okay guys, let's now, it's smooth, we're good to go. We'll clean it up. Now this is also a good time if your thermostat housing looks like this. If you've got the time, you can wire brush it. It's just aluminum, so you want to use a brass brush, not a stainless steel brush. You want to use something soft. You can also sand it lightly, or you can even paint it if you wanted to, if you've got the time. And it makes a big difference when you look in under the hood. It just makes everything look newer and better. This surface here is in really good shape on this one. It's not pitted or corroded, so it's just a bit of staining on there, that's it. So we're happy about that. And we'll clean any of the debris or any of the old gasket that we've got in there. We want to make sure that it's not floating around in the cooling system when we're done. Okay. That coolant looks nasty. I'm just going to get some of it out. Another reason why you want to wear your eye protection. There we go. Because what we ideally want, we want dry surfaces to work with when we're going to put this back together. So I've lowered that level of fluid in there. And now I'm going to dry off both of my surfaces. We'll get the new thermostat and gasket in place. We'll apply the never sees to the bolts, and then we'll tighten it all down. There we go. Ready. Try that off. Now the thermostat goes in with this pointing up, okay? The spring is down, so that's how it sits, just in case you're confused. Drops in just like that. We've got our thermostat gasket. Now some of these have an adhesive strip on the back, and you peel the backing off and you can actually stick it right on underneath here. This one doesn't have the sticky on it, but it'll work just fine. It's gonna sit just like that. Just try to make sure you have it centered on the holes. The next thing that I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna ream out that hole, the one that had the rusty bolt in it. I'm just going to ream that out a little bit just to get some of that junk out of there. You can see it's poking out the other side here. Because we want to have that as clean as we can. We don't want more rust coming our way. Get most of that debris out of there. Okay. There we go. And we're on the home stretch now, won't be long. That's better. So we'll get that lined up. We'll take a good look down the holes, make sure everything's good. The gasket's not going to get pinched. Now I'm going to put this one in first. I'm going to apply the nickel anti-seize lubricant that we have here. And I'm going to be liberal with it because we don't want any future leakage, or if we do get any future leakage, we don't want it to get on the threads of these two bolts. Like I said, it's such a simple bolt, but it can cause you a lot of pain if it decides to break off in there. So I'm just going to tighten that down slowly. I'm going to leave it a little bit loose because I want to still be able to move this a tiny bit if I need to. Now, let's do the last one here. Nice dose of that. There. Now there's this little bracket here that we took off. We want to make sure we don't forget to put that back on. That goes on like that. And unfortunately that one clip is broken right off. It was there. So we could actually remove that just to make things better, because it's not doing anything at the moment. It's slippery. There we are. So we'll fire that through there first. Put that in. It's a little tight in there, so I'm going to do this by hand, just to make it easy for you to see. If you thread them up by hand, you know you haven't cross-threaded anything as well. You know that you've got everything's running smoothly through there. You haven't got the bolt cross-threaded. There we are. Now with these bolts, you don't want to go over tight. You want to get them nice and snug and then check them and then snug them again. Because if you do over tighten them, you do run the risk of snapping the bolt off. There we are. There we are. So I'm just doing a little bit at a time, back and forth, just make sure they're even and that everything feels good. There we go. Excellent. So now we've got electrical stuff here, which clips into this clip here. It actually wasn't clipped in when we started, but it is now, so great. Whoever worked on it last time didn't connect that up. So make sure we reconnect the fan switch. There we go. We'll mop up a bit of this and dry it off a bit. Okay, now for our new hose. Now this is the factory hose that we're going to use today. We were lucky I had one on hand. That's the part number you're looking for. This is for the 1.6, so it's a B61P 15-186. And this is identical to the old one we took off. So there we are. So that's the orientation of the hose, like that. That little silver mark goes right to the thermostat housing. Now again, we're gonna put these guys on first, and we're gonna be careful to put a finger in them just in case they get loose and fly off. Oops. So a little easier when they're on the car. There we go. That's why we do the finger, because if that does fly, it's gonna go somewhere. So put your finger in the hose, put this on. There you go. Now you're safe. Again, finger in the hose. There we are. Now we're all set. And you can use a bit of coolant. If this is, you can just run a bit of coolant around inside each end of the hose to help it slide on if it's, you know, if it's really stiff. But you should be fine. That's it. So you'll notice right here there's a tab. When you get to that tab, stop pushing it on, because that's where it's supposed to butt up to. It's not supposed to go over it or any further than that little tab right here. There. Okay, so that job's done. Now all we need to do now is top off the coolant, check the reservoir, run the car for a while afterwards, make sure that everything's working the way it should, the temperature's normal, and add any coolant as needed as the coolant level drops. So any questions, guys, please put them in the comments. I hope this helps you out, and if you have any video suggestions, please post them in there and I'll do my best to make them for you. Hit that subscribe button, like the video, and I'll make more for you soon. Thanks.